Your computer is doing things right now that you never agreed to, not because it's broken, not because you clicked something by accident, but because the operating system running on it was designed from the ground up to work for someone other than you. And before you assume this is just another tech rant, stick with me, because some of what I'm about to share is going to change how you think about the machine sitting in front of you. If you're new to Nolan Tech, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because we upload new tech videos regularly that help you stay ahead. Let's start with something Microsoft quietly rolled out that most people have no idea is running on their system. It's called Recall, and the concept behind it sounds almost reasonable until you actually think about what it means. Recall takes periodic screenshots of your screen and uses AI to make them searchable. The idea is that you can ask Windows to find something you were looking at weeks ago and it'll pull it up. Sounds like a productivity win, right? Except what it's actually doing is building a visual diary of everything you've ever done on your computer. Every document you opened, every website you visited, every message you typed, every form you filled in, all of it captured and stored locally, indexed and searchable. Microsoft has emphasized that this data stays on your device and is protected by encryption tied to your Windows Hello login. And that part is genuinely true. But the question isn't just whether Microsoft can see it. The question is whether you want that kind of comprehensive record to exist at all. If someone gets access to your device, if malware finds a way in, if someone sits down at your unlocked computer, that searchable history of your entire digital life is right there. After significant backlash, Microsoft made Recall opt-in rather than enabled by default on Copilot Plus PCs. But the feature exists, and you should know whether it's running on your machine. If you have a compatible device and you're not sure, go into Settings, Privacy and Security, and look for Recall. If you don't want it, turn it off. Simple as that. But let's keep going. Because Recall is actually one of the more visible examples of a much bigger pattern. Windows 11 sends data back to Microsoft constantly. This isn't speculation, it's documented. Microsoft calls it telemetry, and they frame it as necessary for fixing bugs, improving performance, and making Windows better over time. Some of that is probably genuine, but the scope of what gets collected is enormous. Your device specs, your app usage, your crash reports, details about how you interact with features, websites you visit through Edge, search queries you run, the list goes on. And here's the part that frustrates a lot of people. You can't opt out entirely. Microsoft requires what they call required diagnostic data at minimum, regardless of your preferences. You can go into Settings, Privacy and Security, Diagnostics and Feedback, and switch from optional to required, which reduces the amount being sent. You can also turn off tailored experiences, which is Microsoft's way of using your diagnostic data to show you personalized tips and suggestions that, let's be honest, are really just soft ads. Do both of those things if you haven't already. But accept the reality that some data is always flowing from your machine to Microsoft servers. That's just how Windows 11 works. Speaking of ads, let's talk about what Microsoft has done to the Start menu, because it's genuinely one of the more brazen things they've pulled. When you open the Start menu in Windows 11, you may see app suggestions mixed in with your pinned apps and recent files. These are advertisements. Microsoft has deals with developers to promote their apps directly inside the operating system you paid for. And it doesn't stop there. The lock screen can show promotional content. The Settings app has occasionally pushed Microsoft 365 subscriptions. File Explorer has surfaced OneDrive promotions. These aren't subtle. They're ads embedded into the core interface of a paid operating system. You can disable most of them. Go into Settings, Personalization, Start, and turn off Show recommendations for tips, app promotions, and more. Also go into Privacy and Security, General, and turn off the Advertising ID toggle, which prevents apps from using a unique identifier to serve you targeted ads. Neither of these kills every promotional element, but they help. Now, let's shift to something that's silently killing performance on a lot of systems, and it has nothing to do with malware or outdated drivers. Windows 11 runs a service called sysmain, which you might know by its older name, Superfetch. The job of sysmain is to monitor which apps you use regularly and preload them into RAM before you even open them, so launch times feel faster. In theory, it's smart. In practice, on systems running traditional spinning hard drives or with limited RAM, it can create a miserable experience. Your disk usage spikes to 100% in Task Manager for no obvious reason. The system feels sluggish even when you're doing nothing. Everything slows to a crawl. And it's sysmain doing what it thinks is helpful in the background. If you're on an SSD with plenty of RAM, you might not notice it at all. But if you're on older hardware, disabling sysmain can make a noticeable difference. Press Windows key plus R, type services.msc. Find sysmain in the list, double-click it, set the startup type to disabled, and click Stop. Give it a few days and see whether things feel better. For a lot of people on older machines, this one change is transformative. If you're enjoying this video and finding it useful, take a second to like the video and subscribe to Nolan Tech. It really helps the channel and lets us keep making detailed tech content like this. Windows Update is another area where Microsoft has steadily tightened its grip. In older versions of Windows, you had real control over updates. You could delay them indefinitely. You could decide when they installed. In Windows 11, that control is largely gone. You can pause updates for up to 5 weeks. You can set active hours so your computer doesn't restart during times you specify, but you cannot permanently defer updates. Eventually, Windows will install them regardless. And while the security case for automatic updates is legitimate, the execution isn't perfect. Updates occasionally break things. Printers stop working. Specific software becomes unstable. A game that ran fine yesterday crashes after a patch. When that happens, your options are limited. You can roll back an update within a short window after installation, but if you don't catch the issue quickly, that window closes. The best approach is to configure active hours accurately so updates happen when you're not working, and to check Windows Update history occasionally so you know what's been installed if something suddenly starts behaving differently. Let's talk about the Microsoft account requirement, because it's one of the most contentious things about Windows 11 Home. During setup, Microsoft essentially forces you to sign in with a Microsoft account. The option to create a local account, which was always the default in older Windows versions, has been buried and, depending on the version and update state, removed from the setup flow entirely. Microsoft wants your identity tied to their ecosystem. Your account enables OneDrive Sync, Microsoft 365 integration, the Microsoft Store, and various personalization features. Some of that is genuinely useful, but it also means Microsoft knows who you are and can associate your device's telemetry with your identity. If you want a local account, it's still possible. The workarounds change as Microsoft updates the installer, but they typically involve disconnecting from the internet during setup or using specific keyboard shortcuts to skip the account requirement. It takes some effort, and Microsoft clearly wants to discourage it. Whether the ecosystem benefits are worth the trade-off is something you'll have to decide for yourself. Edge is the other major push you'll encounter constantly. Windows 11 sets Edge as the default browser, and Microsoft has made switching away from it more complicated than it should be. You used to be able to set a new default browser in a couple of clicks. Now you have to set defaults individually for multiple file types and protocols. And even after you've done that, certain things in Windows will still open in Edge regardless of your preferences. The search button on the taskbar, certain links in the Settings app, results from some widgets. They're hardwired to Edge. It's a frustrating pattern that mirrors some of what Microsoft did with Internet Explorer decades ago and faced regulatory action over. If you want to use Chrome, Firefox, or another browser, set it as your default through Settings, Apps, Default Apps, and go through the list carefully. But accept that Microsoft will continue finding ways to keep Edge in the picture. OneDrive integration is another example of the same philosophy. Windows 11 is designed to push your desktop, documents, and pictures folders into OneDrive Cloud Sync by default. The first time many people see this is when they run out of their free storage allotment and suddenly can't save files to their own desktop. Or when they delete something locally and discover it's also gone from their other devices because everything was syncing without them fully realizing it. OneDrive Cloud Backup genuinely is useful for many people. The problem is the lack of transparency around how aggressively it's enabled. If you want to manage it, right-click the OneDrive icon in the system tray, go to Settings, and look at the Sync and Backup tab. You can choose which folders sync, and if you want, unlink your PC from OneDrive entirely. Just make sure you have another backup solution in place if you do, because local-only files are always one hardware failure away from being lost. Activity. History is a feature that deserves its own moment of attention. When you're signed in with a Microsoft account, Windows tracks your activity across devices, which apps you've opened, which files you've worked on, which websites you've visited through Edge. The original purpose was a feature called Timeline, which let you pick up where you left off on different devices. Timeline was removed from the Windows 11 UI, but activity history as a data collection mechanism didn't disappear with it. To address this, go to Settings, Privacy and Security, Activity History, and uncheck the options there. Also clear any history that's already been collected. It's one of those settings that's easy to miss because it's not prominently labeled as a privacy concern. The bloatware situation in Windows 11 is something that genuinely shouldn't exist on a paid operating system. Depending on your PC manufacturer, you might get Windows with apps like Candy Crush, Disney+, TikTok, Spotify, or various shopping tools pre-installed, none of which you asked for. Some of these are Microsoft partnerships, some come from the PC maker, all of them consume space and may run background processes. The fastest way to deal with them is to right-click each one in the Start menu and select Uninstall. For anything stubborn, you can use a tool called Windows Package Manager from the command line, or look into debloating scripts from trusted sources. Just be careful with anything that touches system components, and make sure you're getting tools from reputable places. Delivery optimization is one of those settings that sounds reasonable in isolation, but feels wrong when you understand the full picture. Windows 11, by default, uses your internet connection to help distribute Windows updates to other people on the internet, functioning as a peer-to-peer upload node. Microsoft benefits because they reduce their bandwidth costs. You bear the cost in upload speed. To adjust this, go to Settings, Windows Update, Advanced Options, Delivery Optimization, and either turn off downloads from other PCs entirely or restrict it to devices on your local network only. The second option means your devices can share updates with each other, which is actually efficient if you have multiple Windows machines while preventing Microsoft from using your connection for strangers. The taskbar in Windows 11 is a step backward in flexibility compared to Windows 10 in several specific ways. You can no longer move it to the top or sides of the screen. Icon sizing options are limited. Right-clicking the taskbar used to give you quick access to Task Manager, and now it doesn't. Drag and drop onto taskbar buttons was removed. Some of these have been restored over time through updates, but the overall direction has been toward locking down customization rather than expanding it. If you need more taskbar control, a tool called Start All Back or similar utilities can restore some of the older behavior. Microsoft hasn't shown strong interest in bringing these options back natively. File associations are something that quietly frustrate a lot of Windows 11 users. After major updates, your default app choices can reset. PDF files start opening in Edge again. Photos open in the built-in Photos app instead of the viewer you prefer. Audio files default back to Windows Media Player. It's a pattern. Every major update is an opportunity for Microsoft to reassert its preferred defaults. The fix is always the same. Go back into Settings, Apps, Default Apps, and reconfigure your preferences. The annoyance is that you have to do it repeatedly. Keeping a mental note of your preferred defaults so you can reset them quickly after major updates is a practical habit worth developing. Now, let's get into the specific things you can do right now to tighten up your Windows 11 experience. Start with a full audit of your privacy settings. Go to Settings, Privacy and Security, and work through every category. Location, camera, microphone, voice activation, account info, contacts, calendar, call history, messaging, background apps. For each one, consider whether any app actually needs that permission. Most don't. A note-taking app doesn't need microphone access. A weather widget doesn't need calendar access. Revoke anything that doesn't have a clear, legitimate reason to be there. In the General section under Privacy and Security, there are several toggles worth examining. The Advertising ID toggle controls whether apps can use a unique identifier to serve targeted ads. Turn it off. The option to let websites show locally relevant content by accessing your language list is a small but real data point. Turn it off. The option to let Windows improve, start and search results by tracking app launches is behavioral profiling. Turn it off. Suggested content in the Settings app is advertising inside your operating system settings. Turn it off. DNS settings are something most people never touch, but absolutely should if privacy matters to you. By default, your DNS queries go through your internet service provider, which means they have a log of every domain you've looked up. Switching to a privacy-focused DNS provider like Cloudflare at 1.1.1.1 or Quad9 at 9.9.9.9 keeps that data away from your ISP. Better still, Windows 11 supports DNS over HTTPS natively, which encrypts your DNS queries entirely. Go to Settings, Network and Internet. Click your active connection, then Hardware Properties, and configure DNS server assignment manually. Enter your preferred DNS addresses and enable the HTTPS option. It's a 5-minute change that meaningfully improves your privacy. Windows Search is a service that indexes your files to make them searchable. For most people, it works fine in the background, but if you have an older system with a traditional hard drive, the indexing process can hammer your disk for extended periods, especially after a fresh install or major update. You can limit what gets indexed by going into indexing options in the control panel and removing locations you don't search often. If you use a dedicated file search tool or simply don't use Windows Search much, you can disable the Windows Search service entirely through services.msc, just as we discussed with sysmain. Be aware that Start Menu Search will be significantly slower without it. Visual effects are a real performance drain on older hardware that most people ignore because Windows looks nice out of the box. Animations, transparency, shadows, live thumbnails, they all consume GPU and CPU resources. On a modern mid-range machine, the impact is negligible. On an older laptop or budget desktop, it can be the difference between a sluggish experience and a snappy one. Search for Adjust the Appearance and Performance of Windows, and in the Performance Options dialog, choose Adjust for Best Performance to disable everything, or manually uncheck specific effects while keeping the ones you prefer. Turning off transparency effects alone, which you can do under Settings, Personalization, Colors, can make a visible difference without making Windows look completely plain. Fast Startup is a feature worth understanding. It's designed to make Windows boot faster by saving certain kernel state to disk during shutdown rather than performing a full power-off cycle. It genuinely does make startup faster in most cases, but it can cause problems with driver updates, certain USB devices, and dual boot configurations. If you've ever noticed that restarting Windows resolves an issue that shutting down and turning on didn't, fast startup is likely why. A restart always performs a full cycle. A shutdown with fast startup enabled doesn't. To disable it, go to Control Panel, Power Options, choose what the power buttons do, and uncheck Turn on Fast Startup. Whether you keep it enabled depends on whether you've experienced issues related to it. The Ultimate Performance Power Plan is a genuinely useful option that Microsoft hides by default. It's designed for workstations and disables aggressive power-saving measures that can cause latency spikes. To enable it, open Command Prompt or Terminal as Administrator and run Power CFG. Duplicate scheme E9A42B02 D5DF 448D A003F14749 EB61. Then go to Settings, System, Power, and you'll find the new plan available. Whether it makes a meaningful difference depends on your hardware and what you're doing, but for CPU-intensive work or gaming, it can help. Browser extensions are part of your privacy setup that exists entirely outside of Windows settings, but matters just as much. If you're concerned about tracking, install uBlock Origin in whatever browser you use. It blocks ads and trackers at the network request level and is one of the most effective privacy tools available. For encrypted connections, modern browsers now enforce HTTPS automatically in most cases, so a separate extension is less necessary than it used to be. The key point is that your Windows privacy settings and your browser privacy settings are completely separate. Locking down one without the other leaves a significant gap. File encryption is worth thinking about if your device stores anything sensitive. BitLocker is built into Windows 11 Pro and above, and it encrypts your entire drive so that the data is unreadable without your login credentials. If your laptop is stolen, BitLocker means the thief can't simply pull the drive and read your files. The critical step is saving your recovery key somewhere safe, ideally printed and stored physically or saved to a separate storage location, not just on the device itself. Losing the recovery key with no backup means losing access to your data permanently. For most personal users, BitLocker isn't essential, but for anyone who travels with a laptop or works with confidential information, it's a straightforward layer of protection that's already included. Cloud backup is a topic worth addressing honestly. OneDrive is convenient and deeply integrated into Windows 11, but using it means your files pass through Microsoft's infrastructure. For most personal files, that's an acceptable trade-off. For anything genuinely sensitive, you might prefer an end-to-end encrypted option where even the storage provider can't read your data. Whatever service you choose, make sure you understand its privacy policy and what access the company has to your files. The worst outcome is assuming your cloud storage is private when it isn't. Here's the broader picture that ties all of this together. Windows 11 is a capable operating system. It's more stable than it was at launch. The interface, while different from Windows 10, has matured. Security has genuinely improved in several meaningful ways. For most people, it works well and serves their needs. But the defaults, the ones Microsoft chose out of the box, are calibrated toward Microsoft's interests, not necessarily yours. Data collection is maximized, Microsoft services are promoted, ecosystem lock-in is encouraged at every step. None of that changes unless you actively choose to change it. The good news is that most of the settings we've talked about are genuinely adjustable. It takes an hour to go through them properly. And the result is a machine that still runs Windows 11 but does so on terms that align more closely with what you actually want from it. Take that hour. Go through your privacy settings methodically, review your default apps, decide what you want syncing to the cloud and what you don't. Understand what's running in the background and why. Make informed choices rather than accepting whatever Microsoft decided was convenient for them to enable by default. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe to Nolan Tech, and turn on notifications so you never miss future tech videos. Now I want to hear from you. What's the first Windows 11 setting you're going to change after watching this video? Drop it in the comments below.